Welcome to another edition. 301, I believe, Dr. Eric E. Lopkin, correct?
Yes, it is.
Can I give you a little trivia because I love baseball history?
Go ahead.
Do you know why that's relevant?
Why is that relevant?
Because if Mickey Mantle didn't do his last year, he would have had a 301 batting average instead of 299. That's huge.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. So, on more important topics, and this is excellent, 301. And what the average podcast does, what, 100? I'm sorry. Could you reiterate that?
From what we've been told, the average podcast reaches under 100 episodes.
Okay. So, getting on to the business of business. I took it for the team, Dr. Lopkin, even though I don't have the most exciting life, but I have better things to do, like even reruns of Hogan's Heroes is better than what I saw at the Democratic convention. Even liberal media, not so great. Not exactly Schindler's List. Am I correct?
You are. The reviews of the convention have been lackluster at best. And I think the simple fact of the matter is, if you take a look at the two conventions, at the Republican convention, they talked about unity. They talked about what they were going to do for the country. The Democratic convention has essentially degraded into Orange Man bad.
Well, isn't it the only? Okay, in fairness, if you have nothing going on, what else are you going to do?
And
even Barack, one of my favorite presidents, just kidding, was really hysterical. Trash and by the way, I think he's more dangerous and did more detrimental things to America than 100 years from now. We'll know that, but that's another subject. The most divisive speech, and what does he do at the end? The community organizer, which is really a disorganizer. But we need to come together. Yes, it was supposed to be a happy convention. If that's happy, you need, what do they have? Prozac. They should have handed. If that's happy, then the most clinically depressed person on earth is like laughing. That was awful.
Yeah, they're not bringing anybody together. And the fact of the matter is, how can Harris be expected to bring the country together when she can't even bring the party together? When the Obamas were speaking, not only wasn't Harris in the room, she was not in the state. And the reason for this was she does not want to be associated with the Obamas because apparently they were the ones behind ousting Joe. So you've got the most powerful Democrat, and let's not mince words here. Forget Joe Biden, forget Kamala Harris. Barack Obama is still the most powerful Democrat.
No doubt.
You have him behind the ouster of his former vice president, and the current presidential candidate doesn't even want to be in the room with him. How are you going to heal the country when you can't heal that divide?
Not exactly a kumbaya moment. Yes, I would absolutely 100% agree with that. One thing that does fascinate me about Obama, that is Barack, not really his wife, is that being someone that was in sales, he presents himself as the nicest guy. He would cut your throat in 5 seconds.
Oh,
He's
yes.
Pragmatic.
We talked about.
Go ahead.
We talked about this back when he was still in office on terrestrial radio. I did interviews with high ranking Democratic officials who all described Obama as, if you don't agree with him, he will cut your throat. The only people he allows to speak their mind are people who agree with him. He does not want to deal with dissenting opinion.
No question about it. Even, forget about if you like Trump or not. I mean, it's never happened that a former president, you talk about democracy, a former president, so you go for the debriefing, in the same time, he's spying on you. That never really gets the air that it really should. Sorry, it just doesn't.
No, it doesn't, and apparently it's still continuing, though not with Trump. We know that the Biden administration was spying on the Trump campaign in 2016. Well, now it's starting to come out that the Democratic National Committee placed spies in the RFK Jr. campaign this year.
Nah.
So they have not changed their spots.
Well, aren't they really Stalinists? Let's just cut the shit. Sorry for the word, but it's true. It's gone from, McGovern, Mondale. This is a hardcore socialist Stalinist party that will do any. They will prop up someone that is Joe Biden that basically you wouldn't want to serve you at Dairy Queen, to prop him up just so they can maintain power. That is anti-American. That is disgusting. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong at all. Unfortunately, that is what has become of the Democratic Party. And I love the fact, I'm still involved with the no labels movement. And they constantly are posting on social media about great leaders who tried to bring the country together. And who are the two leaders they quote the most often and use as examples? John F. Kennedy and Ronald Reagan. And
there you go.
When you look at those two individuals, not only was there a lot of similarities between their policies and their approach to the office, they actually had people behind the scenes who were involved with both of those presidencies. Now,
Tip O'Neill, who was diametrically opposed, not completely, it was a different Democratic Party, to Ronald. They used to go and have two Irish guys having a good time, would go to a pub and have a couple brewskis.
All right, Tip O'Neill.
Again, Kamala wasn't there. Well, hold on. Kamala wasn't there because it would have been a fifth, but that's another subject. We'll get onto that later. There you go. But that's true.
But Tip O'Neill worked with Reagan the same way Newt Gingrich worked with Bill Clinton. We do not have this capability anymore. And, it's hysterical because Pete Buttigieg was giving an interview.
Oh, God.
I believe yesterday morning. And he was saying how Joe Biden was a great president. He got through an infrastructure bill that Trump had promised that he couldn't deliver on. Well, why couldn't Trump get the infrastructure bill passed? Because the Democrats would not vote for it because they didn't want to give Trump a victory. Whereas Republicans were more looking at it as, okay, you know what? This part of the bill is good. We'll take what we can get. And to this day, the Republicans are more capable of working across party lines than the current Democrat Party. And that is a shame.
It's going to be interesting, Dr. Lopkin. I believe if Trump wins, I believe we already talked about this, but the Democratic Party will have to go for a reformation. They will have to be reconstituted. If they win, then we're all screwed. But if they lose, it might actually be a very good thing because they'll have to get their shit together. Correct?
Yes,
because it's off the hook. And wait, hold on. It gets to the point. It gets to the point of Glenn Beck. Whatever. I'd take him with a grain of salt. He's okay. Whatever. He's going to. About 15 years ago, he says, "Well, they have the mask on now, but there'll be a point where the left, which is the Democratic Party, will no longer have the mask." And we're at that point, aren't we, Dr. Locke?
Yes, we are. The mask is off. All of the little backstabbing and dirty tricks that they would do behind the scenes, it's all out in public now. And yes, I do believe if the Democratic Party loses, it's actually going to force a reformation that will be good for the Democratic Party. We've already started seeing little bits of it with Jamal Bowen getting kicked out of office, with Cori Bush losing her primary. You're starting to see people stand up and go, no, this party has gone too far to the left. They're all about power now. They don't care about America. How many times have we repeated the line that we keep hearing from diehard Democrats? I didn't leave the party left me.
No question. And just as an aside, between the both of them, the two squad members that have been unceremoniously dismissed, I would have to say, as an educator, I'm pretty good at guessing IQ, combined, what do you think, 160, 170?
Oh, combined. No, that's way too high.
There you go, genius.
Remember, one of these guys was a school principal that didn't recognize a fire alarm.
And how he got to be a school, that is a completely different podcast. We'll just go from there. Yes, there you go. So we have the end. You talked about Barack Obama, that'll be around, he's like 62. So he'll be around for another at least 30 years, God help us all. And he'll never leave Washington, by the way. A thorn in America's back, but that's another issue again. But we have Uncle Joe. It may be the last time we saw Uncle Joe, but he went out. It would be like the last concert of Led Zeppelin. He went out in Uncle Joe style, didn't he? Incoherent, yelling, jacked up. Who knows what the hell was going on?
Well, the Democratic convention is being run so poorly that they had to delay Biden's speech until almost midnight. Now, we know that Joe Biden cannot handle that. We've been told by his own staff that he calls a lid at 4 o'clock. We saw the debate, what happens when he had to be, up later. This was absolutely unforgivable of the Democrats. If you had any respect...
Let me interject. No. You have an amazingly great point. But they are the party of caring and LBGQXL7. They let an old guy twist in the wind, to use a Nixon metaphor. Did they not, Dr. Eric E. Lopkin? They set him up to fail. They effed him.
They did. I think... Personally, and this is just a hunch of mine, I have no sources on this, I have no evidence that this is what happened, but I think they did it deliberately so that they could point to the speech and say, this is why we had to remove him. Because there's still people saying the only reason they removed him is because he couldn't win. So I think they wanted him to be incoherent so they could fall back and go, well, no, see, this is what was happening. This is why we had to take him out of, off the ballot, which doesn't answer the question. If he's that far gone, why is he still operating as president? Well, RFK Jr.'s running mate, Shanahan, actually said on a podcast the other day that he's president in name only. He's not doing anything. And in fact, immediately following his speech, he left. He's not in Chicago anymore. He's in California taking a month-long vacation.
Oh, why not? And by the way, he's irrelevant. He's no longer president. He's done. And it's all Stalinistic, by the way. And that's not like just an exaggeration. It's like you're no longer a use to us. May the door hit you on the you know what. So he's done. You'll never see the guy ever. And I just have to ask you, you're a nice guy, but are you shedding a little tear for Uncle Joe?
You know, it's one of those things. Nobody should be treated the way he was. But on the other hand, it also couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
Thank you. Summed it up perfectly. Yes,
know,
I love that.
He was never a nice person. He was miserable
SOB.
to deal with back when he was in the Senate. The idea of Lunch Pail Joe was always a myth. He never cared for his constituency. He only cared about his political power. And now that he's no longer able to serve the Democratic Party, they have stripped him of that power.
You know, sometimes, Dr. Eric E. Lopkin, karma's a bitch.
Yes,
and
it is.
His whole life was about his legacy, blah, blah, blah. He is going to, okay, every president, and except for Reagan, because dementia, he did have it at the end, let's be fair. But even Nixon, who was so-called, disgraced, he made huge mistakes, but he was, many presidents contacted him. He wrote several books. I've read many of them. Had a life. It wasn't a life that he thought he would, but a life after. This guy's going to go down to you ever see like the 1960s one-hit wonders? That's Uncle Joe. You will never hear from him again. No, there won't even be a book. How do you like that? Zero chance.
No, because he's not capable of it.
Reagan, of course.
Reagan, even with his dementia, and you have to remember that Reagan's dementia didn't hit until either 2 or 3 years into his second term. Joe Biden, they knew he had dementia when he announced he was going to run, and they hid it from the American people. But Reagan was still able to make appearances with the other presidents at events after he left office. I remember there was one where he
did the keynote address in 1988.
Yes, right. Biden is not mentally capable of doing that.
He had more than capable people behind the scenes. He had the A team. Uncle Joe has the B- team, and I'm being nice just because I'm an educator and I feel sorry for students. But you have, Mayor Pete. These people are incompetent. I felt fine. I was alive during Reagan, more than alive. So out of college, second term, and I felt fine. Yeah, I knew he didn't have the A game, but he had an A game behind him. There was no problem, Dr. Lopkin. This guy, you have every loser in every position, God knows.
Yeah, we've seen failure after failure after failure from Blinken, from Buttigieg, from Harris, over and over. I mean, there is nothing that this administration has done that can objectively be called successful. Even their wins, like the infrastructure bill, they spent I'm blanking on the number, but I believe it was $4 billion to get 16 EV charging stations up and running. I mean, so
actually, Dr. Lopkin, I think you're being nice because you are a nice guy. I think it's actually 6, but who cares?
Is it 6? Well, as I said, I didn't have numbers at the top of my head.
You know what?
Yes.
The thing is a complete disaster.
Yes, even their wins were losses. And it's because they did not have capable people. And, there was a lot of talk during the Republican primary about how deep the Republican bench was. And it was. Tim Scott could step up in a minute. J.D. Vance could step up in a minute. Nikki Haley could step up in a minute. There was a bench. There were dozens of people that weren't running for president. Elisa Stefanik could step up. There were tons of them. They had a deep bench. The Democrats, there was a reason that they didn't allow a primary. They didn't want to showcase the fact that they had no one capable of running. Even Harris's big, amazing accomplishment, according to people at the convention that were interviewed, her accomplishment is being vice president as a Black woman. Well, guess what? She had nothing to do with that. She didn't win a single primary vote. She didn't win a single primary vote in 2020 or 2024. She is the only person. This is now going to be her big accomplishment. She is the only person in American history to run for president without getting a single primary vote.
Whoa. But they are the party of democracy. How could you say that? You're a very intelligent person. They're the party of democracy.
Yeah,
what happened?
The facade of them fighting for democracy is falling apart quickly. And people are seeing it. Democrats are saying, you know what? I don't like Trump, but I can't vote for Harris because they installed her as a coronation and nobody voted for her.
Yes, very interesting. And even you think of all the hoopla. And in fact, this is a fact, Dr. Lobkin, that about 90% of all press engagements and stories with Kamala has been positive. 89% of Trump has been negative. Then please tell our listeners why the latest is right off the press. The betting odds have now risen for Trump +3. How does that happen? Please tell me.
Well, part of it is Harris's own strategy, or her campaign's own strategy. She was essentially handed the nomination a month ago, and in the past month has not done one interview with the press. She took a couple of questions at the side of the plane and made no sense while she was answering. And in fact, the question she was supposed to answer was, with her policy of giving $25,000 for a down payment to first-time homebuyers, how were we going to pay for it? And she babbled on and never answered the question because she can't answer it. She doesn't know.
No. What you said, Dr. Lobkin, is the salient point. She really doesn't know. Look at her background. You talk about the bench. A lot of Republicans have private sector experience, have run major operations. Her biggest accomplishment is dating Willie Brown. She's a moron. She has not done anything. Am I incorrect? Please correct me.
No, you're right. And in fact, the only policies that she has spoken about is the economic policy that she put forward. Now, according to this policy, she wants to give
price controls.
Well, she wants to give first-time home buyers $25,000 to help make a down payment. What's that going to do? That's going to raise the prices of housing. So it's going to be a wash. It's not going to help anybody. She wants to institute price controls on grocery stores and food producers. Now, previously, she's also said she wants to raise the minimum wage. Well, guess what? If you raise the costs on food producers by causing them to have to pay the labor more. And she's already said she wants to raise the corporate income tax to 28% from 21%. So you're raising their taxes, you're raising their labor costs, and you're going to put a cap on how much they can charge. Grocery stores on average operate at a 1.5% to 2% margin. This will destroy that margin and force these businesses out of business. You're not going to save people money at the grocery store by doing this. You're going to make food harder
Create
to find.
shortages.
Yep.
A couple things on that, okay? First of all, she has no appreciation, and she shouldn't have any appreciation because she's never been there. Okay, so Frosted Flakes raises their prices 200%. Okay, so you're in community college or in high school. The first thing you would know is then people, hello, pay attention, people don't buy cornflakes anymore. They buy wheat thins. Hello, it's not, it's like the basic economics of anything.
Yes, it is.
I
and
mean,
you're
and
actually seeing this with restaurants right now. Fast food restaurants are actually lowering their prices, not because of any threat from the government, but because people are cutting back because they can't afford it. It's called market forces.
Yes, something the Democrats have no idea about. And the other thing about your $25,000 credit, I've heard that many times about it'll increase prices by $25,000. I disagree. I think it will.
Oh no, it'll increase by
prices.
more.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Because now people who have no business buying a house, so the price is $350. Well, they could now have a house. So let's just make it $450.
And
who gives a shit?
What you're going to see is another housing meltdown like we saw in 2009, where people are getting loans that they can't pay back, where houses are going to go into foreclosure. And we've also seen another example of this when the government made it so easy to get student loans. What happened? Did it make it easier for people to go to college? Yes. Did it make the cost of college go down? No, the cost of college has skyrocketed because the money was easier.
For a college education in terms of cost. Okay, I'm sorry to say, be careful for the unintended consequences of what you do. Liberalism, right?
Yes.
So you have student loans, so everyone can get a blah blah blah. If you had no student loans, colleges would be building Olympic-sized swimming pools and having rock stadiums and paying college athletes, which is a completely different subject, XXX amount of. It would be about education, but if there's no constraints, who cares?
Right. If you want to impose price control somewhere that could actually make a difference, put a cap on what colleges are allowed to charge.
100% agreed. So you look at the entire convention. Again, we talked about betting market +3. So far, we're halfway through. Thank God. Thank you, Jesus. Well, yeah, thank you. Halfway through. Excellent. I think it's been a failure. The only thing the pundits and the press have talked about is AOC as the next rock star. Again, a lot of energy, but what she said made effing no sense. And this whole shtick about she grew up in a wealthy community and went to maybe one of the most expensive colleges. What she did with it, a bartender, that's another issue, whatever. One of the most expensive private colleges. So your verdict on the AOC performance, and it was a performance.
AOC's performance was typical for AOC. She never manages to make any sense. She is still rated the least effective congressperson. In all her time in the Congress, she has never gotten a single bill out of committee. Why? Because she doesn't make any sense and her policies do not work. She is a social media influencer.
I love the adage. Yes, the social influencer that happens to be a congressperson.
Yes.
That's her.
And, quite frankly, her performance, unfortunately, was very typical of this convention. I was having a conversation yesterday about Kathy Hochul's speech on Monday. And, I very clearly remember when then Governor Mario Cuomo made his national debut at the DNC.
Oh, God. I remember it too, yes.
With a brilliant speech.
Out of the park.
He electrified the country. He could write his own ticket at that point. And every pundit I have heard, everybody who saw this, basically said Kathy Hochul did the opposite. She tanked her political career. That speech killed her. She's not going anywhere.
Well, she should never have gone anywhere. And her claim to fame, she's the only one that Mario Cuomo's son didn't try to molest. For good reason, by the way. She's a mental midget, and there is a whole book that I'm going to read about. We talk about the decline of America. It's about decline of leadership. You have her, basically the governor, maybe the third most populous, and you could make a point, the second most influential state in the union, a complete, I'm sorry to say, moron. That speech was yikes. If I was grading someone in college, that speech, I'd give them an F. I'd say, God, I don't know what to do. Maybe you should go to sociology. Business is not for you.
And
a moron.
And this, again, just a hunch. I have no evidence of this. But the thought just occurred to me as we're critiquing these speeches. Most of them have been absolutely terrible. Even Obama's speech was not up to what Obama is capable of doing. We've seen Obama give absolutely brilliant speeches, whether you agree with him or not. And even his speech wasn't, his A game. And I'm starting to wonder if everybody was told, tone it down a little bit. We don't want to make Kamala look bad.
I think you're a really smart guy, obviously, but I don't think it's even that. I think when Obama had to deliver the goods back in 2004, he was a community organizer. I don't have no idea how he survived this on my business, making $50,000 a year. I have no idea. So he had to bring the A game, the high hard one, as they say in baseball. Now he's living on Martha's Vineyard. He's the gravitas is gone.
He's phoning it in.
Dialing it in.
Yeah.
Dialing it in. Yes, he is. So speaking of dialing in, I think we totally agree there's a huge enthusiasm gap. But there's also a lot of rumblings, and you and I used to like the Rolling Stones. I got it. The day is over. But we talk, there's a lot of partying. Could Kamala, back in the day, be hanging with Keith? Because there's a lot of viral stuff. And, at first I thought it was a joke. And then you start looking at it with real, psychologists. And no, and addiction specialist. She's bombed.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's true, but I don't know. Whatever. You tell me, Dr.
There have been stories coming from people that used to work for her. These are folks that found it intolerable to work for the vice president and quit. We know that Vice President Harris had more turnover than any vice president in recent memory, primarily
any memory.
because these folks found it her working style intolerable. Well, a lot of them are starting to come out and say, yes, all the cackling and the laughing, the word salad. It's not because she's stupid. It's because she has a drinking problem. Now, I do not, under any circumstances, want to make light of this possibility. Alcoholism is a disease. If if
Yes, it
if
is.
if she is an alcoholic, I wouldn't blame her for this any more than I blame Biden for getting dementia. But it's another indication of what is the Democratic Party hiding from the American people. It is absolutely terrifying, the possibility that over the last 3.5 years, the United States of America has been run by someone with dementia and someone who is half in the bag. I mean, this is not a joke. I am not criticizing Biden and Harris for these conditions, but it is a terrifying possibility if it's true.
I actually think of this dementia you can't help. I do, when we completely agree with the Democratic Party. It's all about power. Uncle Joe, yeah, he was never the brightest bulb in the Christmas tree. But basically, the life of an alcoholic, if you're down and out, is not good. Kamala, just go to Newport Beach, hang out, have some Mai Tais, and be done with it.
See,
unbelievable
I was
hubris.
I was going to go in another direction and say, go check into Betty Ford, get yourself cleaned up.
Nah, you're 60. You got plenty of money. You can write a book. Just go out. Who gives a shit, right? But the point is, you have the hubris to think you are ready for you're a drunk. And I don't know if it's true, but what I saw, okay, there's two choices. Either you're drunk or you're just effing stupid. Both of them aren't great. There you go.
No, in either situation, whether it's true or not, she is not capable of doing the job. And more people are seeing this. And again, whether or not the rumors and stories of her drinking are true, there is a large audience out there, as former CNN correspondent Don Lemon just found out, who don't believe she is capable of doing the job. And for any of our listeners, if you haven't seen Don Lemon's recent video interviewing people about who they're voting for, please go to YouTube and watch this. Because Don Lemon went down to Atlanta talking to the African American community there, and he had trouble finding anybody that was going to support Harris. He even tried to convince them that things were better under Harris than they were under Trump. And several of these folks laughed at him.
Actually, it's worse than that, Dr. Eric E. Lopkin, because it was actually, I believe, Atlantic City, which is pretty blue. And
I'm sorry, you're right. Atlanta was something else.
No,
my mistake.
Not about no, but it makes it worse. Yes. The only reason I did that is because it's worse.
Yes, New Jersey has been reliably blue, and he still couldn't find people.
Yeah, people were laughing at you. And the other thing, you got to worry about the polls. Not worry, you got to wonder. There was I don't know the name of the person. I'm sorry to say, he went into black barbershops, which I think would be an awesome experience. I think that would be amazing. Highly underrated. I think it would be really cool. So he went into a black barbershop. I believe this time it might have been in Atlanta. No, it was in Chicago. I'm sorry. In Chicago. And it was a 50-50 split. 20 years ago, it's like 90. And basically the point is, That's 50-50. They're telling you that. I think and I give them credit. I'm sorry to say, Dr. Lopkin, unlike many Jews are supposed to be like the intelligentsia. If you're Jewish and you vote for a Democrat, after what you saw for the quotations, mostly peaceful Jew-killing protest, you are a moron. Blacks have a lot more brains than Jews, in my own mind, at this point.
Well,
I'm sorry to say, but that's my honest effing opinion.
That brings up an interesting point, because a Jewish leader was recently interviewed, and they were asked why there is such a huge Democratic component among the Jewish people. And she actually said it's because Jews attend college in larger numbers than almost any other demographic group. And when they go to college, they are being brainwashed.
Well, you know something? I have no sympathy, empathy for that. I have tremendous enthusiasm for blacks leaving the reservation. Many of them, disproportionate numbers of them did not go to college versus Jews, but they got the effing brains to figuring out there's no excuse. I'm sorry, there's no excuse.
I'm not making an excuse. This is the explanation that was given.
No, I'm not disputing that, but there's no excuse for that. Okay? Hello, genius. Not you, the Jewish population. If you don't wake up and smell the coffee, God, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, again, we are seeing that awakening. A recent poll in New York City showed 50% of Jews that were polled were supporting Donald Trump. That is big, because quite frankly, that may be enough to swing New York City. And if New York City doesn't drag the state blue, upstate New York, Long Island, these are actually very Republican areas. It's New York City that
let me
keeps
just interject
dragging it blue.
Dr. Lopkin, let me interject one thing. One thing about Jews, which I am a Jew, which I have a real problem with liberal Jews. This is me. Orthodox Jews, you talk about the upstate New York, they're who I identify with. And your point is well-founded, especially after this convention. It moves another 10% in New York with the so-called intelligentsia. It could be game over, Dr. Lopkin.
It could
be. Because Orthodox Jews are real Jews and they understand what the hell's going on.
And let's not forget that during Joe Biden's speech, for those people that actually saw it, he actually
Nothing about Israel.
No. There was. He actually came out and said that the protesters outside the DNC had a point. He was defending the pro-Hamas protesters. So if you watched this, you have to say, wait a minute. These people are trying to exterminate us. We cannot let people in power that are going to support that.
Education, because I have a lot of blue-collar friends, and I have learned to live this, Dr. Lopkin. I used to be really, really hell-bent on college. What I've learned is that your regular person, I've been to bonfires with them, I've had keg parties with them, and they have a lot more common sense than your so-called intelligentsia.
Oh, and yes. When I run our intern program 100%. For our company, I go for high school students. I don't want to deal with the kids from college because they've already started to be indoctrinated. They're not learning what they need to know. If I can get them in high school, I can actually teach them skills before they get to college and give them a leg up.
Very well done. So, getting to our big breaking news story, we have one more thing, Dr. Eric Lopkin, to deal with, and that is the revised job numbers. Okay, I've been around the block. I've seen it all. And it used to be like, I don't know, 50,000 jobs. So you just take it from there, Dr. Lopkin. You're the doctor. Go ahead.
Yes, the Bureau of Labor Statistics came out and announced today that the job numbers that they have been giving us for the past year, technically it was the year ending March 2024, were overinflated by 818,000 jobs. That is
What's wrong with a million? No, Dr. Lopkin,
that is
a
the
million,
largest.
It's no big deal.
That is the largest misstatement of jobs since 2009, when people were being laid off left and right.
And they couldn't calculate it. It wasn't because well, it could have been a combination of both. Yes, you're well-founded in that. So basically, it was one big bunch of bullshit.
Yes, and let's not forget that the job numbers are what the Biden administration, or excuse me, the Biden-Harris administration has been touting as proof that Bidenomics works. Well, guess what? Your one proof just went out the window. So now you have
go.
You have fewer jobs being created than you claimed. You have higher inflation. You have higher mortgage rates. There is absolutely nothing that the average person can point to that says, yes, I am better off now than I was 4 years ago.
No, there is. You're missing one of the quintessential points: racism. Yes, you are. I'm sorry, I'm correct. Racism.
I don't think racism has
what
gotten any better.
Racism. I know that. I'm not talking about actually analytically. I'm saying, what else do you got?
Oh, well,
Trump went to a place in Michigan, and they said, you're going to where they had a Ku Klux Klan rally, I don't know, a month ago. I have no idea. And they were grilling him, fake grilling, obviously.
Right.
And they said, well, guess who was here 2021? Hello, genius. But that's all they have. It's really sick.
I honestly believe that on November 8th, after the election is over, if we do not have a Harris presidency, you are going to see on CNN, well, maybe not CNN because they've actually been turning around lately, but certainly Joy Reid on MSNBC, Whoopi, Joy, and Sunny on The View, they are going to be yelling at the top of their lungs that the only reason Kamala Harris lost is because America is racist and misogynist, and they couldn't vote for a black woman. And it'll have nothing to do with the fact that she has no capability of doing the job.
I got that 100%, but let's just dial it back. Okay, let's just say CNN's found Jesus, so to speak. Okay, so you look at the combined viewing audience of who cares? They're psychopaths anyway. Who gives a shit? It's like these people, basically, like we talked about, I think it was like 2 months ago, if I was a psychiatrist and I wanted patients, you always do the whole thing about prospecting for clients. I would get the viewing audience in my area of MSNBC, and that is ripe for the picking. Now we have our last. Go ahead. Sorry, Dr. Lopkin.
It is true. And, we're going to see. I honestly believe that the Democratic dysfunction that we saw in 2017 after Trump took office, I think that's going to pale as to what these people are going to go through if he wins again.
Here's where I think I might be differing with you.
All right.
Because Trump was a virgin in 2016. He knows where the bodies are buried. He knows who to hire the right people. Not like Jefferson, whatever the hell his name is, Attorney General.
No.
Is he great at that? No. And he's a one-term. He doesn't give a shit. That doesn't bother me in any way. So what do you think of this, Dr. Go ahead.
It shouldn't bother you. I'm just saying,
No,
I think they're going to lose their minds.
Oh, no, lose their minds, but I think it's good. There's not going to be any Russia collusion crap, none of that crap. And speaking of this is completely as an aside, but I love this. I don't know if I sent it to you, but they had one of my favorite people, the basically chairperson of the Senate, our friend, was at a Dominican Republic festival in New York, right? Mr. Schumer. And he walked over, and of course he had the glasses in his pocket. I have no effing idea why that is. And there he thought, oh yeah, Chucky, you're the greatest. They were like, hey, you're effing loser. It was so great. And then the whole crowd was like, get the hell out of here. You're an effing loser. I love that. That's a completely an aside. I don't know if you saw that, but it was priceless, quite frankly. Did you see it, Dr.
Again, this is another symptom of what is going on in New York. They are tired. New York at one point was the greatest city in the world. And because of woke policies, it is a crime-ridden cesspool now. It has fallen so far. You know, I still have hopes that someday it will be able to come back, but there are a lot of people who say, this is it, the city is dead.
Yes, Tinkerbell, I would have to say, good luck with that one. Only because it's New York City, it has a chance. But that is for another day. And by the way, if you bought a high-priced condo in New York City, may Jesus Christ be with you.
You're regretting that.
The resale value on that, may God be with you, but whatever. So the last story, Dr. Lopkin, RFK Jr., it looks like he's going to endorse Donald J. Trump. I'm going to throw it 100% to you. You do the analysis. That's what our listeners want. Go for it.
Yeah. RFK Jr. has announced that Friday at 2:00 Eastern time, he is going to be addressing the nation. There is a strong possibility, based on comments from his running mate, that they are going to pull out of the race and endorse Donald Trump. There has already been talk that RFK Jr. may be angling to get a cabinet position in the Trump administration.
And I would give it to him in 2 seconds.
Absolutely. Now, more than just RFK, though, there is also talk now that Trump, we know he is working with Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard is helping him prepare for his debate against Kamala because she devastated Kamala in the 2020 debate.
She electrocuted him, and it was check, please. There you go.
Now there is talk that she might have a place in his administration.
I hope so.
You are talking about the fact that Donald Trump is now reaching out across the aisle to people who have gotten tired of the left-wing shenanigans of the Democratic Party and bringing them on board. Well, guess what? RFK Jr. is going to bring Democratic voters with him. Tulsi Gabbard will bring some Democratic voters with him. Not the diehard liberals like the Jessica Tarloffs of the world.
Who gives a shit?
Main Street Democrats are listening and they're saying, wait a minute, Harris hasn't talked to the press. She hasn't said anything about what she's going to do to help us. We were better off under Trump. Now Trump is reaching out to build an even bigger tent, and people are responding. I honestly believe if RFK Jr. does leave the race and endorses Trump, it may very well be game over, because even the polls that have Harris ahead only have her ahead by 1 or 2% within the margin of error. And most of those don't take RFK into consideration.
Dr. Lopkin, I need to ask you, and I'm doing it for our listeners. I believe, why would you wait till Friday if you were not going to endorse Trump? Dr. Eric E. Lopkin, your thoughts?
Well, according to Shanahan, who's RFK's running mate, the choice that they were making is they've already determined they cannot win the election. In fact, they've actually been losing out on ballot access. So the decision they had to make is, do they stay in, aim for a 5% vote? The reason this is important is because if they get a 5% vote, they are an official party automatically in 4 years and can make a run as an independent party in 2028. That was their other option other than pulling out and endorsing Trump. They actually said their big concern with doing this is that they don't want to pull votes away from Trump and be responsible for a Harris presidency. At no time did they ever consider endorsing Harris. So
okay, I think, again, my original question is, why, if they're waiting for the end of the convention, the convention, why? I believe it's going to be a Trump endorsement.
If you
wanted to endorse the Democrats, you would do it during the convention. Why wouldn't you?
No. They're not endorsing the Democrats. That was never an option. The only two options are to stay in the race and fight, or to endorse Trump. And again, this is according to Shanahan. Why wait till the convention is over? Because either way, this announcement is big enough that it could stop any Democratic bounce that usually happens after a convention.
And that's why I mentioned the Friday thing, is because I believe if you look at the options, if you're JFK Jr., you're 70, I think he's 70-something years old.
RFK Jr.
I'm sorry. There is no tomorrow, okay? But if you get a seat, no, it's a definite win for him if he gets involved in the Trump administration. And then he's the game changer. And if he does 2028, who gives a shit? So you got, you're RFK Jr. and you're 75 years old and you got 2%. Who gives a shit?
Well, no,
you're an asterisk.
Their other option wasn't to run again in 2028. It's to form a new party for 2028, the same way No Labels wanted to. It's got nothing to do, 2028 has nothing to do with RFK Jr. himself. But think about what RFK Jr. really stands for. He's big on environmental issues. He's big on food safety. If Trump makes him Secretary of the Interior or puts him in charge of the FDA, that could be a game changer, bringing people into the Republican Party.
And if Trump doesn't do that, he's an idiot, because there's a lot of things. No, You nailed it. That's why you're
No.
the doctor. Because, no, you are the doctor because that's what it is. You bring him in. He has a life. That's my point. I didn't do it as articulately as you did. But, yes, who gives a shit about you're 70-something years old, 28, whatever. Might as well be like, the Star Trek. Who cares? But now you're in the game. You're a power player.
Well,
He's going to do it.
I honestly do believe he is going to endorse Trump. But you are forgetting one thing. You keep saying 2028, he's irrelevant. He's a Kennedy. And there are younger Kennedys who are working on his campaign. The Kennedys
Yeah, but they
are
don't
not
like him.
No. Yes, they do. The Kennedys, the older Kennedys don't like him. The younger Kennedys are working on his campaign. They are with him. They're the ones that would be benefiting from 2028, not RFK Jr.
Okay, that's a completely different story. And by the way, what's his sister's name? Not RFK, JFK Jr.'s sister. And it doesn't make a difference. But I have to say, I'm not a mean person, but she ran for Massachusetts senator, and she lost. She is not exactly a Mensa Kennedy. I forgot her name. But yeah, she's a genius. I don't know. That's a big. Go ahead, Carolyn. I think her name is.
Yes, Carolyn Kennedy.
Genius.
I honestly believe that he is going to pull out and endorse Trump, and I believe that Trump is going to say, "Yes, let's talk. Let's find a place for you."
Well, I would have to say if, and it's a big capital IF. If that happens, guess what, Dr. Eric E. Lopkin? It's called game over.
Yeah.
Game over. Because you got to understand the speech. It's not going to be like, some drunk like Kamala doing, I can't help it. But no, you have a Kennedy. That is yikes. That's yikes. Am I wrong? You tell me.
No, I think you're right. And remember, this isn't the first time that Kennedys will support a Republican. Remember that Arnold Schwarzenegger, as governor of California, was a Republican, married to Maria Shriver, who was a Kennedy. So this is not unprecedented. It'll be the largest event of its kind, but not unprecedented.
You know something, Dr. Lopkin? I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking about one thing. Last comment. Biggest event, you said. If you're RFK Jr., everyone wants to make their mark. And let's just face it, I like the guy. He's a smart guy. He has not exactly made a huge mark as a Kennedy. Do we agree with that?
Yes.
Come on, I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
What a way. You're 70-something. Why not do the final? I mean, I bow out and I'm going to start a third party and Carl the cat could win. Who gives a shit?
Well,
am I correct? Just tell me.
Think about it, though. If he endorses Trump and Trump actually gives him a position where he can put his ideals into practice, that is going to be, and we use this word a lot when it comes to politicians, that's going to be his legacy.
No, that's it. Of course. Eric E. Lopkin does it better than me. That's it. It's called a legacy. I didn't articulate it as well as you did, but that's a fact. So you go out the third party. That's like a footnote in like about 1,000 pages of history, okay? But you go out and you join a campaign and you do something that he's involved with, like the environment or whatever, or vaccines or about health or whatever. 100. Why wouldn't you do that? No one gives a shit about. Oh, again, I need a third party. Yeah, third party. That and 30 cents.
I think that is what he's going to announce. And of course, he doesn't want to let the cat out of the bag before, because he wants the reporters to show up to the event. He wants people to watch the event. So, yes, he's going to be playing it, underplaying it until Friday. But all the signs do look like he's going to pull out and endorse Trump.
Okay, our listeners need to know. Final thought. Okay. If wow, this is bigger than I thought. If he eviscerates the whole talking point, which is, you can blow away the racism. No one gives a shit about that. That train left the state. That's like Hitler. Okay, come on. My cat's Hitler. Okay. If he talks about threats to democracy, final thought. Could that be game over? You got my point in terms of that's what they're running on. And if he turns that around as a Kennedy, not like, Billy Bob, that's a huge problem. Am I not correct?
It is going to be a huge problem for the Democrats, and they've already started this. Shanahan has done a number of interviews talking about the fact that the DNC has placed spies in their organization, that the fact that Kamala Harris never ran a primary is a threat to democracy. The fact that they didn't allow RFK Jr. to primary Joe Biden is a threat to democracy. So they've already been talking about this.
I have to interject one thing. As a I don't want to be sexist. Well, as a guy, you got your ego. He obviously, forget about everything else. He's pissed. He could have been the president of the United States if they let him run. It wouldn't have been Kamala. There's no way. So he has an axe to grind. Am I not correct?
Yes, he does have an axe to grind. And I think that does factor into this. There has not been any talk of any option, even remote, of him endorsing Kamala Harris. So, yeah, I think that's
what
because
if Obama
there is
calls him up? What if Obama calls him up and says, you can't do this? It's a threat to democracy. Does that change anything?
RFK Jr. will laugh in Obama's face, quite frankly.
Okay, I'm just asking the doctor. That's all. Well, Dr. Lopkin, I liked this show. This was a good one. It's 301. And again, Mickey Mantle, if he didn't do the last year, would have had 301. But we are on to bigger and better things. We have a great show next week with a subject that we visited maybe a month ago, about the current millennials, Generation X. It's hard to even keep a handle on that, but a great show, and our listeners can contribute to the effort, can't they?
Yes, they can. Go to the new xvadio.com/connect. Let us know what you're thinking. You can also find it at the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. Messages there. Give us your opinion. Tell us what issues you care about. And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Bites at the Carnivore Radio website, xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin. I'll see you next week.
We'll see you then.